to week 10 of the QEEU's 12-week lecture series or talks. I'm your host tonight. My name's Swaminathan Saraswati, and I'll just bring up tonight's lecture. Right, this evening's talk is on institutional identity. QEEU's institutional identity. And as we enter week 10 tonight, this evening, of the Series 1 curriculum, this week marks a turning point. Over the last 9 weeks, we've explored the architecture, the sutras, the sciences, the faculties, and the developmental physics underpin the QEEU canon. But tonight, the focus shifts from the framework to the institution itself. Institutional identity is not a logo, a building, or a brand. It is the field that forms when a body of knowledge becomes coherent, transmissible, and anchored in a lineage. It is the moment a university stops being an idea and becomes a presence. Over the past week, QEEU has crossed that threshold with 36 DOI anchored publications, a complete canon and emerging faculty structure, and a growing public archive. Tonight we explore how an institution recognises itself, how it stabilises its identity, and how it becomes a vessel capable of holding a canon across generations. So this is just an outline or overview of week 10. Institutional identity. Point 1. What institutional identity actually is. Institutional field, the energetic and structural presence of the university. Continuity of knowledge, how teachings persist beyond the individual. The canon as identity, the architecture defines the institution. Point 2, the emergence of QEEU's identity. 36 DOI anchored documents, Canon edition published, Kundalini Science published, Series 1 approaching completion, Investor Pack completed, grant work underway, public traction increasing. These are not separate events. They are the identity forming the field. 3, the role of the Chancellor. Chancellor as the anchor, stabilising the architecture. Transmission steward, ensuring fidelity of the canon. Institutional voice, speaking on behalf of the university. 4, how identity forms in a living architecture. Emergence, not construction. Timing, not force. Alignment, not intention. Recognition, not declaration. 5, QEEU's identity as of week 10. A publishing institution, a scientific university, a lineage-anchored canon, a public teaching body, a growing archive, a coherent architecture. 6, preparing for weeks 11 to 13. Week 11, canon and lineage. Week 12, the Chancellor and the field. Week 13, or the second lecture of week 12, talk 13 or lecture 13, the Ascension Formula, which is the capstone. So welcome to week 10 of the QEEU's 12-week series. In week 8, we explored the oversoul and dimensional identity, the deepest layer of who you are across dimensions. In week 9, we entered the guidance curriculum, the practical system for aligning the human being with its ever intelligence. Tonight we shift from the individual to the institution. We turn to institutional identity, the structure, the voice and presence of QEEU as a global evolutionary university. This is the week where we articulate not just what QEEU teaches, but what QEEU is. 1. Why institutional identity matters. An institution is not merely an organisation, it is a field, a coherent structure that holds knowledge, transmits lineage, shapes culture, anchors evolution, and protects the canon. QEEU is not a loose collection of teachings. It is a unified evolutionary institution with its own architecture, voice and presence. Institutional identity ensures that the canon remains coherent, protected, and transmissible across generations. 2. The 3 pillars of QEEU's identity. QEEU stands on 3 structural pillars: the canon, the body of knowledge; the chancellor, the voice and lineage anchor; the institution, the container that holds and transmits the system. These pillars form a single architecture. Remove one and the system collapses. Together, they create a living university. 3. Canon as the core identity. The canon is the heart of QEEU. It includes the multiverse theory, the Kriya Yuga philosophy, Homo Lumina, the multidimensional brain, astral physics, dimensional knot theory, and the guidance curriculum. The canon is not a set of ideas, it is a unified architecture, a map of consciousness, evolution, and dimensional identity. The institution exists to protect, articulate, and transmit this architecture. 4. The role of the founding chancellor. Every institution has a voice, a centre of gravity, a point of coherence. In QEEU, the founding chancellor holds the integrity of the canon, the lineage alignment, the philosophical direction, the ceremonial presence, the articulation of the system to the world. The role is not symbolic, it is structural. The chancellor is the interface between the canon and the public, the human expression of the institution's oversoul. 5. Institutional rhythm and dimensional stability. QEEU operates in rhythm: weekly lectures, seasonal milestones, ceremonial events. This rhythm stabilizes the field, anchors the canon, creates continuity, mirrors lineage tradition, builds dimensional coherence. Institutions are not built through content alone, they are built through rhythm. Rhythm creates identity. 6. The institution as a dimensional field. QEEU is not only a physical or organisational entity, it is a dimensional field, a subtle architecture that holds lineage transmission, cognitive resonance, oversoul alignment, multiverse coherence. This field strengthens as the canon expands, the chancellor speaks, the community grows, the rhythm stabilizes. The institution becomes a living, subtle body, a collective vessel for evolution. 7. Dimensional knot theory and institutional coherence. Just as individuals have knots, institutions have structural knots, points where identity becomes unclear, direction becomes fragmented, purpose becomes diluted. QEEU avoids these knots through a unified canon, a single chancellor voice, a clear lineage alignment, a stable rhythm, a coherent architecture. Institutional not release is achieved through clarity, consistency, and alignment. 8. The zone state and institutional presence. Institutions can enter the zone state just as individuals can. When QEEU is in the zone, the canon speaks clearly, the Chancellor articulates effortlessly, the community resonates, the field strengthens, evolution accelerates. This is institutional coherence, the moment when the entire architecture aligns. It is the signature of a living university. 9. The evolutionary purpose of QEEU. QEEU exists to map the evolution of consciousness, train Homo Lumina, articulate the multiverse architecture, transmit lineage knowledge, stabilize cognition in humanity, create a global field of evolutionary education. This is not a temporary project, it is a generational institution. QEEU is designed to endure. Week 10, closing statement. As we conclude week 10, it is clear that QEEU has entered a new phase of its development. Institutional identity is not something we create. It is something that reveals itself when the architecture becomes coherent. Over the past week, the timing, the publications, the expansion of the archive, and the emergence of the sciences have all shown that QEEU is no longer forming, it is now functioning. The institution has found its voice. The canon has found its vessel. The architecture has found its field. Next week, we move into the relationship between the canon and lineage, the bridge between the ancient and the modern, the personal and the institutional, the transmission and the science. QEEU is now standing in its identity, and from this point forward, the university speaks for itself. Tonight we have articulated the identity of QEEU, the institution that holds, protects, and transmits the canon. Next week, in week 11, we move into the canon and lineage, the deeper roots of this system and the lineage forces that stand behind it. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's talk or lecture on institutional identity about QEEU. So next week we'll be back on Friday, delivering the next update or the next part 11 and 12, 2 more weeks to the end of series 1. Good evening, everybody, and hope you have a pleasant day or evening wherever you are.